Millionaire's wife publicly humiliates a homeless woman, only to discover a hidden family secret. Sara Jensen stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, the flickering lights casting a gilded glow over her tailored designer dress. The sounds of wealth dripped from conversations, laughter bubbling over the champagne that flowed freely. She was the architect's wife, a figure so polished and perfect that her friends often referred to her as the Golden Girl. Tonight, she was set to speak about community support, the very cause that had garnered admiration and applause from her affluent circle. But beneath the shimmering surface of her life, seeds of discontent twisted in her gut. As she prepared her speech, Sara's heart raced with excitement, but doubt crept in. Was she really making a difference? Had she truly ever contributed anything more than a credit card number to charity causes? Just then, the atmosphere shifted. A commotion erupted near the entrance, and Sara's polished smile faltered. A disheveled woman stumbled in. Dirt streaked across her face and clothes that had clearly seen better days. The crowd turned, curiosity morphing into a collective gasp. "Get her out of here," Sara's voice sliced through the murmurs, fueled by embarrassment. In her mind, she played the part of the perfect hostess, maintaining the dignity of the evening, until her irritation boiled over. "Can't you see this is a charity gala? This isn't the place for whatever this is." The laughter from nearby guests stung. The woman recoiled, but something flickered in her eyes, a glimpse of vulnerability that struck Sara, almost unexpectedly. Yet she was too far gone in her social armor to take it back. As the incident spread across social media, Sara quickly became the target of outrage. "Millionaire's wife humiliates a homeless woman." She read the posts on her phone, heart sinking deeper with every share. Friends began to unfollow, and her perfect life began to unravel like a poorly knit sweater. Panic gripped her as the realization hit. Her reputation, once untouchable, now lay in shambles. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sara's desperation drove her to investigate Linda's life, scrolling through news articles, social feeds, piecing together fragments of a puzzle she desperately wanted to control. Her heart raced as she uncovered a shocking truth. Linda was her estranged aunt, severed from the family years ago amidst a feud that Sara had turned a blind eye to. Instead of feeling relieved, sympathy shattered through her skin, each piece of new information revealing the depths of her own privilege that she had squandered for status. Questions swirled in her mind. How had she taken so much for granted? Could she afford to rebuild the bridge that had been burned, or would her previous arrogance keep her shackled to the past? As she underwent this emotional upheaval, her pulse quickened, and dread tightened its grip around her throat. Just as Sara prepared to reach out, another notification blared on her phone. A new post savaging her character had gone viral. The very nature of her reality felt cataclysmically uncertain. With her heart pounding, she braced herself against the walls of her meticulously crafted world, realizing that every echo of laughter she once thrived on now cast dark shadows on the path she needed to carve toward redemption. Would she be forever entangled in her past mistakes, or could she grasp the fragile possibility of reclaiming not just her aunt, but also the moral strands of her identity? Sara sat in her lavishly appointed living room, her designer couch feeling more like a prison than a sanctuary. The evening news rolled quietly in the background, but she found it impossible to focus on the screen. The coverage of her actions from the gala replayed in her mind like a relentless loop, words that felt like daggers stabbing at her carefully constructed identity. It had only been a handful of days since the incident, yet it felt as if her life had spiraled into chaos overnight. As the echoes of past laughter faded, an unsettling silence enveloped her. Friends from her social circle had distanced themselves, their names falling muted from her phone as notifications dulled to a whisper. It was a haunting solitude, amplifying the questions she had tried to avoid. Who was she now? What had she truly valued? Returning to her phone, Sara opened the social media app, her fingers trembling. The comment sections were relentless, tearing her apart, piece by piece. The image of Linda lingered in her mind, her eyes wide with pain and confusion. How could she have dismissed a human being in such need? The truth hit her harder than any critique. She had sacrificed compassion on the altar of status. Overwhelmed, Sara felt an urge to reach out to apologize, yet the fear of rejection gripped her. What if Linda had moved on, erased the ties of family that Sara had neglected? How could she even start to repair years of neglect and blindness? Pushing the discomfort aside, a spark ignited within her. Sara realized that to seek redemption, she needed to offer more than just an apology. She would need to confront the very roots of her privilege. It began with one decision. She would find Linda. With renewed determination, Sara packed her large branded handbag with essentials. A notebook, a pen, and a few carefully chosen items of warmth, a scarf, bottle of water, and granola bars. She stepped outside, the night air crisp and biting, as it clashed with the warmth of her designer clothing. Sara drove through the streets, reflections of city lights shimmering against her windshield. Every passing corner seemed an indictment of her previous form of charity, vague donations to places where she had never truly seen the faces that needed her help. The labyrinth of public disapproval still loomed large in her mind, but she pushed it aside. Tonight was about taking ownership, about transforming her shame into something actionable. Eventually, she pulled up near the shelter that Linda frequented. The building was illuminated by a single flickering light bulb, casting shadows that danced across the pavement. Sara hesitated outside, nerves coiling around her stomach. The fear of facing her aunt consumed her. What if Linda didn't want to be found? What if the anger that had severed their family still smoldered beneath layers of time and pain? Taking a deep breath, she stepped toward the entrance, gathering her thoughts. If Linda was still in there, how would she explain her past indifference? Would it even matter? Sara reminded herself of the growth she sought. The woman on the street was not just her aunt. She was a beacon illuminating the consequences of an unexamined life. Perhaps tonight would mark a turning point, not just for Sara but for them both. As she entered, the warmth of the room enveloped her, filled with quiet conversations and the aroma of home-cooked meals. She scanned the faces, heart racing as she searched for Linda. The anxiety that filled Sara's chest melted into an undeniable resolve. But no sooner had her eyes settled on a familiar figure than she spotted a man leaving the corner of her vision. He was speaking animatedly to a staff member, his posture laden with assurance. Curiosity piqued. She strained her ears to catch snatches of conversation, mentions of retribution and family. The momentary distraction grabbed her attention, but then the dread settled back in. Before she could frame a single thought to approach Linda, the man turned around, and their eyes locked. Recognition dawned, a chilling wave of realization. This man was not just anyone. He was linked to her estranged family in ways she had yet to unravel. Now, Sara stood on the precipice of both opportunity and confrontation. Integrating the pieces of her past and future felt daunting, but it was time to face them head-on. She squared her shoulders, ready to unveil the hidden complexities of family ties, buried feelings, and the true essence of redemption. The moment had come to confront the ghosts of her past and see where this tumultuous journey would lead her. Sara stood in the doorway, her heart racing as the man moved closer. She caught fragments of his conversation, a name, a mention of money, the undertones of a bitterness that felt familiar. Something deep within her churned uneasily as realization seeped in, like a fog that clouded judgment. The weight of her privilege had encased her in an impenetrable bubble. Here in this space filled with lives that had intersected hers, she had to shed that layer of ignorance. "Liam?" she finally managed, her voice steadier than she felt. The man's gaze flickered. Confusion danced in his features before recognition settled in. In that moment, a rush of anger washed over him. "What are you doing here, Sara?" he demanded, stepping forward, towering over her despite their family ties. The tension electrified the air, and whispers from nearby tables faded into a muted hum. Sara felt the room's eyes on her, judging, weighing. "I'm looking for Linda," she replied, forcing the words out. Every syllable felt laden with unspoken memories, unfulfilled promises. "I need to talk to her. After all these years, after what you did." His voice dripped with disdain. "Do you think showing up here makes everything okay?" His venom cut deep, igniting her guilt into a flame. Sara clenched her fists to brace herself against the surge of emotions warring within. This confrontation had been inevitable, a crescendo building since her realization at the gala. "I know I've been selfish. I didn't care. I've made mistakes. But I want to make it right." Liam's expression shifted to one of bemusement, then hardened. "You don't understand, do you? It's not just about your guilt. There's a bigger picture here. A family you abandoned." The notion skated against Sara's heart, a chilling reality crashing into her perceived righteousness. "I want to understand," she pressed, her resolve hardening. "Please just tell me where I can find her." "Why should I?" he shot back. "Because you decided this was your moment of enlightenment. You think that because you've had a change of heart, everything will magically fall into place?" Each word was a needle, stitching together fragments of her past closure that she had never sought. Anger morphed into something more profound, a longing for connection with the roots she had ignored. Before she could respond, Liam turned as if dismissing her, and she felt that tight coil of fear transforming into a tether of determination. It was time to dig deeper, beyond superficial apologies and the shadows of guilt. Suddenly, an idea cracked through her, sharp and unexpected. "Liam," she called after him, her voice imbued with newfound urgency. "If I can help, you need help too. What are you doing here? This isn't just about me." He paused, hesitating for a moment before a glare enveloped his face. "Why do you care?" "I care because I've been blind to everything," she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. "I lost sight of family. I lost sight of love. But I want to change. Help me understand." The vulnerability in her declaration hung thick in the air. She was teetering between her past and a chance for something greater, and yet she needed Liam's help to navigate through the family's tangled web. This wasn't merely about Linda anymore. It had transcended into a quest for understanding the depth of her estrangement from the family she had abandoned without a thought. As Liam turned slowly back to face her, something flickered in his eyes, perhaps a glimpse of potential reconciliation. The faded anger that marred his features softened, if only a little, and Sara moved closer, without hesitating. "We're family, no matter how broken," she said. "I just need one chance to make this right." Liam's expression held an unreadable mixture of distrust and hope. "You really think it'll be that easy? You can't just waltz back in like nothing happened?" Sara nodded, prepared for the weight of the truth. "I'm willing to face it all, every mistake I've made. Just tell me where I can find Linda and maybe we can start to fix this." He looked at her intently, the battle between skepticism and curiosity evident. The prospect of a family rebirth felt fragile, like a thread pulled too tight. And yet, beneath their strained dynamic lay an unspoken agreement. To confront the past, they needed to shoulder the burdens together. "Perhaps," he began hesitantly, "it's time we recognize not just our failures, but our shared responsibility." Her heart raced. The possibility of change lay within reach, but as Sara absorbed this tentative trajectory, she understood the journey had only just begun, with revelations to unravel and truths to confront. Would redemption await her in the arms of family she once forsook? How far could they venture into both a past filled with pain and a future built on understanding before answers emerged? With questions marking the horizon, Sara prepared to navigate the depths of her family's secrets, knowing the next chapter of her life hinged on unveiling the truth. Sara stood before Liam, the palpable tension carving out an uncharted territory between them. She could feel the walls of her own defense softly crumbling, revealing a vulnerability she had long buried under layers of success and luxury. The air was thick with unspoken emotions. A fragile truce had been reached, but the real work lay ahead. "Where is Linda?" Sara repeated, her voice steadying further as she took a breath. Determination fueled her words, even as doubt flickered in the recesses of her mind. What did she really expect, by resurrecting a connection severed by years of negligence. Liam shifted uneasily, shadows playing across his features as if grappling with the duality of his role as both a brother and an adversary. "As if you care," he muttered, yet a hint of curiosity offset his skepticism. "I do care," Sara insisted, and the sincerity of her assertion echoed in the silence that followed. "I didn't realize until now how much I needed to understand my past. This isn't about wiping the slate clean, it's about facing what I've done and doing something about it." Liam stepped back, crossing his arms defensively. "You think that's enough? You think just saying you want to change will make everything okay?" Her heart sank, but Sara picked up the thread of hope. "It's a start. We can't fix everything overnight, but I owe it to both of us to try. You said we share the responsibility. Let's explore that." Liam regarded her cautiously, the internal struggle etched across his features. Sara felt the gravity of her past mistakes weighing heavily on this moment, a test of her commitment to grow beyond Jamie's glossy world of privilege. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked, his voice softened but laced with suspicion. "Information, guidance. I want to know how to help you and Linda, whoever else is still part of our family." Sara realized as she spoke that her desire to mend their fractured relationship extended beyond mere family duty. It was a deeper yearning for connection, for a shared understanding of what had transpired during her absence. "Linda's not the same woman you remember," Liam replied with a hint of resignation. "She's been through hell since you left. She doesn't want to talk to you, and you can't just waltz back into her life like some savior." The sting of his words echoed. They were a reminder of her previous apathy, a wake-up call to the ennui she had embraced for far too long. Sara's hands clenched once more, not out of anger, but a fervent wish to channel her regret into action. "Then I'll do whatever it takes," she declared firmly. "If I have to meet her where she is, I'm ready to do that. Just please tell me how I can find her." Liam's posture relaxed ever so slightly, if only in acknowledgement of her commitment. "You can try the shelter down on 5th, but I'll warn you, she's protective. You'll need to convince her you're sincere." The words landed like a stone in her stomach, but beneath that weight lay an ember of determination. "I will," she stated, every ounce of conviction lacing her words. "If she's hurting, I want to help in any way I can." "Just remember, she may not welcome you with open arms," Liam cautioned. "You're still the one who turned your back on us when we needed you most." With Liam now quietly retreating into the depths of his emotions, Sara felt the reality of her journey crystallize. The fear of rejection gnawed at her, but the vision of rekindling family bonds became her beacon. As she turned in the direction of the shelter, an unforeseen wave of doubt surged through her. What if the past eclipsed the future she envisioned? This time, standing on the cusp of reclaiming lost ground, Sara had to confront more than just her family's issues. She had to confront the very core of who she had become and who she aspired to be. The cold air hit her as she stepped outside. It was an awakening, a reminder that this path would be littered with challenges demanding more than apologies. Each step towards the shelter felt monumental, each heartbeat echoing a promise to herself, a fusion of fear and excitement wrapped tightly around the hope of reconciliation. What awaited her at the shelter loomed like a relentless tide. Would she find Linda open to her gestures of change, or would Sara's journey toward redemption be met instead with unyielding hostility? As her footsteps quickened, Sara realized she was not only facing her past, she was about to step into a defining moment that would shape her future, if only she could bear the weight of its truth. As Sara approached the shelter, the cacophony of city noise faded, replaced by an unexpected stillness that echoed the uncertainty in her heart. She hesitated at the entrance, the building's paint peeling in areas, a stark contrast to the polished surfaces she was accustomed to, a glaring reminder of the life she led away from her family. The reality hit her like an icy splash. She was venturing into a world she had forsaken, illuminated by the consequences of her choices. Drawing in a deep breath, she clenched her fists, igniting a flicker of courage deep within her. Yet, as she pushed the door open, her pulse quickened at the prospect of encountering Linda, a woman who might not only resent her for abandoning them, but also embody the pain of years lost. Would she ever fully comprehend what it meant to face the woman she once took for granted? Inside, the shelter felt overwhelmingly vibrant, filled with conversations that hummed against the backdrop of vulnerability. A small table held containers of food, people quietly sharing meals and stories. But amidst the bustle, Sara only felt smaller and more isolated. She scanned the faces, searching for echoes of her childhood, the shadow of her sister who had become a stranger. A woman behind the front desk, eyes warm yet wary, caught her gaze. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Linda," Sara replied, her voice steadier than her nerves. "I'm her sister." The woman's expression shifted, concern shadowing her features. "Linda doesn't often talk about family. She's been through a lot." Sara nodded, her heart sinking. It felt like a barrier, further solidifying her status as an outsider. "Please, I just want to speak with her. I need to try." The woman sighed, seeming to weigh Sara's sincerity. "I can't guarantee she'll speak to you, but I can arrange a shorter visit. You'll have to wait." As Sara took a seat in the waiting area, the hum of voices wrapped around her, and reflections of her past danced in her mind. She had chosen to distance herself from the chaos of her family, believing success would fill the void. Now surrounded by the echoes of loss, she confronted her choices. The reputational elevation came at a price too steep to ignore. Minutes dragged, feeling like hours, as she mentally rehearsed what she would say to Linda. Would her sister even care to listen? Would the truth of her absence resonate at all, or would it fall flat against years of neglect? A swell of anxiety tangled with her determination, tightly woven together like the intricate pieces of a puzzle waiting to be solved. Finally, the front desk attendant reappeared, ushering Sara towards a small room. The atmosphere shifted, both oppressive and hopeful, as the door opened, revealing Linda sitting at a table, her form hunched, dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Sara's breath caught. This was her sister, yet she felt like a world apart. "Leave me alone," Linda said tersely, her voice veiled in weariness, as if she had become accustomed to rejection. "I just want to talk," Sara implored, her voice trembling only slightly. "I'm sorry for everything. We need to face what happened. I want to understand. To help." Linda's eyes narrowed, a mixture of pain and anger flickering in her gaze. "Help? Where were you when I needed it? You think a few words will erase everything you've done?" Each accusation struck like sharp blades, unraveling Sara's resolve. "I know I can't take back the past, but please, just give me a chance to show you I'm serious about doing better." Instead of softening, Linda's expression hardened further. "Why should I trust you? Everything you have represents the very choices that led me here. You don't understand." "I want to understand," Sara pleaded, her voice steadying as she leaned forward, revealing her sincerity. "This is my chance to be brave, to confront my past. I can no longer exist in this bubble of privilege, pretending it doesn't affect those I love." The room felt charged with confrontations unfurling between them, each word layering years of resentment and heartache. As the tension grew, it became clear that this moment was not simply about reconciling with her sister. It was about Sara's transformation. This confrontation demanded more than mere acknowledgement of the past. It required a foundation for a relationship, a step toward healing that would redefine who she was. Just as Sara thought she was making progress, Linda stood abruptly, emotions boiling over. "You don't get to dictate this conversation. You're not the one in control here." Frustration surged within Sara, mingling with her longing. "You're right. I'm not in control, but I want to learn how to be a part of your life again if you'll let me." With that, Linda halted, her gaze piercing, weighing Sara's words against the familiarity of their shared history. The air thickened, heavy with the moment's intensity, poised on the brink of clarity or despair. As they faced off, Sara grappled with more than familial estrangement. She was wrestling with the reality of who she had been molded into, a disconnected sister striving for redemption in a world she had neglected. What would it take to break through Linda's defenses? What revelation lingered just out of reach, like the shadows cast by their fractured ties? Sara's journey seemed far from over, with the threat of rejection hovering as her only companion, urging her forward into uncharted territories of vulnerability. The silence in the room deepened, and Sara felt the weight of Linda's scrutiny pressing down on her. Every anxious heartbeat echoed in her ears, a stark reminder of the time they had lost. She was here, trembling on the precipice of vulnerability, and yet she sensed the chasm that separated them, the years of neglect gnawing at the possibility of reconnection. "Listen, I know I can't change your past," Sara began, her voice fervent, "but I'm here because I want to understand your pain. I want to make this right." Linda's skepticism was palpable, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "You think saying sorry is enough, that makes it all go away?" she shot back, incredulity coating her words. "No, it doesn't," Sara admitted, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. "But it's the first step. I want to rebuild what we had, or at least start something new. We can't change what happened, but we can change how we move forward." For a moment Linda hesitated, her expressive eyes flickering with conflicted emotions, anger, hurt, and a twinge of hope that she swiftly buried. "What do you know about moving forward?" she barked. "You left. You moved on with your perfect, shiny life while I struggled." Sara clenched her jaw, acknowledging the truth in her sister's words while feeling a surge of defensive anger. "Struggled? Linda, I watched as our family fell apart. I was drowning in my own success, thinking it could compensate for the mess we were in. But now, it's like the walls I built around myself are closing in. I have to face my choices, and that includes you." The tension in the air crackled, thickening as Linda's gaze bore relentlessness. There was a spark in her expression, one Sara hadn't noticed before, defiance, but also recognition. "Your fancy degrees and the life you flaunt don't mean shit to someone chasing survival every day. You want to make amends. It's not just about saying the right things, it's about doing." "What do you mean?" Sara asked, curiosity laced with urgency, ready for Linda to peel away the layers of her resentment. Linda leaned forward, her demeanor shifting to a different kind of intensity, as if a dam was about to break. "I've been working at the shelter. I see people come and go, many like me who've been discarded and forgotten. What have you done for anyone other than yourself?" The question hung heavy, and Sara felt stripped bare, an implicit accusation echoing in her mind. Had her rise to success shielded her from the responsibilities that came with her privilege? The thought burned like frostbite, a painful awakening. I haven't done enough," she stammered, realization dawning on her. Her life had been insular, her existence devoid of genuine connection to the struggles that shadows the harsh realities outside her life. "But I want to change that. I want to be involved, to understand what it means to truly support." Linda's laughter was a sharp, bitter sound that sliced through Sara's intentions. "Support? Genuine support would have meant being there before things fell apart. You don't get to flip a switch now and think everything can be fixed." Fury and sorrow cascaded within Sara, and she opened her mouth to respond but faltered. Was she genuinely ready to bear the burden of her sister's grievances? Did she have the strength to confront not only Linda, but the truth of her own choices? Something deep inside her twisted painfully, gratitude for this opportunity mixed with a burgeoning fear. What if she failed again? But then, what if this was the clearest path to becoming a better person, not just for herself, but for Linda? "Then what do you want from me?" Sara found herself asking, vulnerability spilling out. "What would redemption look like to you?" Linda held Sara's gaze steadfastly, contemplating before replying. "Redemption isn't yours to dictate, but you might start by coming back here, volunteering. Engage with these people who have had to endure a life you know nothing about. That's where you'll find the answers." The prospect weighed on Sara like a tangible weight as Linda's challenge settled over her. It called for a commitment and a reckoning, a call to arms against her former self, an embrace of discomfort. This was no longer just about reconciliation. It was a robust invitation to transform, to relinquish privilege and tether herself to the very community she had distanced herself from. "I will," Sara pledged, her voice clear, despite the trepidation gnawing at her insides. But before Linda responded, the door creaked open suddenly, interrupting their turmoil. A new visitor stepped into the room, introducing an unforeseen complication. An older man, whose presence bore an air of authority. "Linda, we need to talk," he said, an unreadable expression crossing his face. Sarah's heart raced. The atmosphere shifted yet again, a new layer of conflict slowly unraveling. What revelation lurked behind this unexpected appearance, ready to reshape both sisters' paths once more? Sarah's thoughts raced as the older man stepped into the room, disrupting the fragile moment she had begun to build with Linda. He was dressed sharply, his demeanor confident and assertive, contrasting sharply with the emotional turmoil that had enveloped the sisters. She could sense Linda's immediate shift in posture, her tension coiling tighter as she prepared for whatever confrontation lay ahead. "Who is this?" Linda demanded, her voice tinged with irritation. The man, however, remained unfazed, his gaze unwavering and intense. "Sarah, this is Mr. Hargrove," Linda explained, a hint of annoyance clouding her tone. "He runs the shelter I work at." "Nice to meet you," Sarah said, though the words barely left her mouth. Her focus remained on Linda, keenly aware of the unspoken dynamics shifting between them. Mr. Hargrove's sharp eyes restlessly flicked between the sisters before he spoke, his tone measured. "Linda, we need to discuss the upcoming board meeting. There's been some concern about our funding." "Funding?" Linda echoed, disbelief floating in her voice. "You're worried about dollars when I'm in the middle of something important?" "Important?" Mr. Hargrove's eyebrow arched slightly, his patience thinning. "What's happening here is secondary to the survival of the shelter." The bluntness of his words pierced through Sarah, and she felt the weight of every unprocessed emotion coming to the surface again. "What do you want me to do?" Linda shot back, her eyes narrowing. "I should just abandon this revelation and go back to begging for money? I deserve more than that." "None of us here are getting what we deserve, Linda," he rejoined, voice steady. "But the reality is we're on shaky ground, and we need all hands on deck." The air turned electric, charged with resentment on both sides. For Sarah, the urgency of the situation felt overwhelming. She had come to rekindle a lost bond with her sister, yet now she found herself entangled in a professional crisis that felt light years away from the emotional reckoning she had sought just moments before. "Linda, Sarah ventured, hoping to interject some support, but was quickly silenced by a swift gesture from Linda. "No, go ahead. This is all part of my glamorous life now," Linda snapped, exposing her deeper vulnerabilities beneath the defensiveness. "What are you even doing here, Sarah? You think you can help?" "I want to," Sarah insisted, feeling the foundation of her intentions boiling under scrutiny. "I'm willing to volunteer. I want to understand what you do here and contribute. This place means something to you, and I want to be a part of it. I want to take action." Mr. Hargrove, who'd been observing them closely, ran a hand through his hair and sighed. "It's not about just volunteering, Sarah. It's about making tangible contributions that can help us push through this funding crisis. If you're serious, you'll need to engage deeply. Are you ready for that?" His question struck a chord, reverberating in the very marrow of her bones. She had only just begun her journey toward making amends, yet this was a vastly different kind of challenge, a test of her resolve to connect with a community that demanded real commitment, not just the superficial gloss of charity. "Absolutely," she spoke, the resolve behind her words starting to solidify. "What do I need to do?" Linda looked at her, a flicker of something that resembled surprise mingling with doubt. "Good," Mr. Hargrove said, unyielding. "We need volunteers for meal preparation, outreach programs, and fundraising events. You will need to step into realms that may challenge your comfort zone." The gravity of the commitment sank into Sarah's chest. She had always navigated her professional life with ease, attending gala events and holding board meetings filled with suits and obligations, far removed from the gritty reality of life in the shelter. "I'll be there," she asserted, her voice resolute. "When do I start?" As Mr. Hargrove began detailing her responsibilities, Sarah caught Linda's eye. Despite the tension, and perhaps even because of it, there was a shimmer of respect forming between them, a faint acknowledgement that they were both grappling with their respective battles and growing steely in their resolve. Yet as the conversation shifted, The nagging question at the back of Sara's mind remained. Would her actions truly bridge the chasm, or would they be an empty promise lost to time? Just as that uncertainty loomed, a sharp knock echoed through the door, and a breathless volunteer rushed in. "Sorry to interrupt, but we have an emergency. It's urgent." The suddenly heightened stakes made Sara's heart race, and before she could mentally prepare, the situation spiraled into a new conflict that demanded immediate attention. What awaited them, and how would it test her newly forged commitment? The urgent voice of the volunteer cut through the charged atmosphere, jolting everyone into action. Sara's heart raced, the sudden shift forcing her thoughts away from her own fears and onto the crisis at hand. She glanced at Linda, whose brow furrowed with concern. They both shared the moment, an unspoken understanding passing between them, a silent pact forged in uncertainty. "What's going on?" Linda snapped, her irritation overshadowed by the immediate need for clarity. "There's been an altercation outside. A woman disrupted a fundraising event across the street. The police were called," the volunteer explained, breathless and frantic. "They said it's bad, really bad." Mr. Hargrove's demeanor shifted instantly. "We can't afford another scandal, not with funding on the line." The urgency in his tone brought a wave of realization crashing down on Sara. She had stepped into a world where every choice mattered, where the stakes were not just personal but also effectively connected to those seeking help. Without waiting for permission, Sara felt an instinct drive her forward. "I'll go, I can talk to her." The words slipped out before she could reconsider, driven by a newfound resolve. Here was an opportunity, however chaotic, to confront a situation that tested her burgeoning sense of purpose. Mr. Hargrove seemed taken aback, but recovered quickly. "You're volunteering to step in? You might not be prepared for the rawness of this situation." "Then it's time I was," Sara replied, a mixture of determination and fear threading through her voice. Every nerve in her body screamed that she was not equipped for such a confrontation, yet the thought of turning away contradicted the very commitment she had just made to herself and her sister. Linda hesitated, then nodded. "I'll come with you. 2 heads are better than 1. But we need to be careful. The last thing we want is for this to escalate." As they raced outside, the city hummed with its usual pace, but Sara felt the world around her slow, the gravity of her decision pressing heavily against her chest. One step in front of the other, they moved toward the chaos. Just as the building came into view, sirens pierced the air, echoing the tumult within her mind. When they arrived at the scene, a small crowd had gathered. Onlookers murmured in hushed tones, the atmosphere thick with tension. In the center, a woman, disheveled and visibly shaken, was being held back by a few officers, her hands struggling against restraints that symbolized more than just physical control. They represented a life spiraling out of grasp. "Stay back," one officer ordered as they neared the fray. His eyes narrowed protectively at the gathering crowd. But Sara's focus honed in on the woman. Recognizing the pain and rage etched into her features, Sara felt a stirring within. "Wait!" she called out, a voice rising from her depths. "I'm here to help." It rang with conviction, potent enough to cut through the noise. The woman turned, surprise flickering like a candle amidst a storm. For a moment time stretched, and in that glance Sara saw a reflection of her own struggles, emotions raw and unvarnished. "What do you know about me?" the woman shot back, defiance in her tone. "Enough to know that this isn't right," Sara answered, stepping into that vulnerable space, heart in her throat. It felt dizzying to lay bare her intentions in front of so many, yet this was the proving ground she had envisioned. Would her willingness to confront reality with all its messiness be enough? Just as she began to formulate an approach, Mr. Hargrove stepped forward decisively, imposing in his authority. "This is not about you, Sara. We need order restored, not chaos." But at that instant, Linda's grip on Sara's arm tightened. "No, let her do this," she insisted, a torch of courage sparking in her. Everyone must believe in something to fight for, even chaos, Sara thought, and as uncertain breaths escaped her, a fresh conviction settled over her. Would her willingness to engage in this messy situation transform her from a mere bystander into an active participant in both her sister's life and the world around her. As the weight of the moment deepened, the woman's gaze held Sara's intently. What awaited her in this burgeoning confrontation would redefine the dynamic of their lives, unraveling more layers than she had anticipated. Suddenly, a shout pierced through the crowd. "They're taking her away!" Time hung suspended, gripping everyone in an embrace of uncertainty. As emotions swirled, Sara could only wonder, would this be the moment that would truly change everything, or merely the prologue to greater challenges, reflecting the untamed complexities of their lives ahead? The emotions in the crowd surged like a tide, a cacophony of outrage and confusion washing over the scene. Sara stared into the woman's eyes, and the chaotic atmosphere faded, narrowing her focus. This was no mere confrontation. It was a crucible, a chance to unlock something deeply buried within her. Was she prepared to engage with another person's pain when her own was still so raw? As the police pulled the woman aside, Sara's heart thudded more with each second that ticked by. The tight knot in her stomach urged her to act quickly. "I know you're hurting," she called again, softening her voice, trying to cut through the tension like a blade. "Who do you think you are?" The woman spat. The disdain in her voice echoed with years of anguish. Sara ground her teeth, recognizing the power of that anger. It mirrored her own past frustrations, the feelings of worthlessness she had fought against, clinging to hope. "Just someone who wants to help," she replied, her determination sharpening. "Please tell me what's wrong." In that moment, she wasn't just pleading with the woman, she was imploring herself to step out of her own shadow. Sara glanced back at Linda and Mr. Hargrove, who stood like pillars of authority, their concern palpable, yet hindered by their need for control. It struck her how often she had done the same, playing it safe instead of stepping into the unknown. "Stop!" the officer barked, stepping forward as the crowd shifted, some jeering, others whispering. "Let the professionals handle this." Rage simmered within her. He didn't see the humanity in the situation, only protocols. "Professional," Sara muttered under her breath. What did professionals know about trauma? Watching the officers, she realized they might not see the woman's story at all. They saw a statistic, a disturbance. "Why do you care?" the woman asked, her voice laced with distrust, and something broke in Sara. In those words, she saw the chasm of isolation that so many faced, people too often overlooked, until they became unseen objects of ridicule. "Because I know loneliness," she confessed, taking a step closer despite the officer's warning glare. "I know how it feels to be judged." At that moment, their lives converged like spirals of water in a drain, swirling toward the same destination of vulnerability. The woman's guard wavered. Sara could see the flicker of humanity behind the haze of defiance. The crowd remained tense, but an opportunity rippled outward. Could she bridge that gap? Sara didn't have all the answers, but the woman needed something, a connection, a validation of her existence. "Let me help you tell your story, please," Sara implored, desperation coating her voice. No one should face this alone. A soft gasp broke through the noise. Someone from the crowd stepped forward to support her, emboldened by Sara's raw honesty. In that moment, a shift began, like the opening of a flower in the soft morning light. Then, from behind, Mr. Hargrove's voice pierced through again, this time carrying less authority and more urgency. "Sara, we need to move on. This isn't our responsibility." The conflict boiled within. On one hand, her duty to protect herself and maintain the image of the organization. On the other, the stirring within her to prioritize genuine human connection over reputation. What would it cost to defy authority, to pursue her own version of compassion? No. Her voice quivered, but she felt something stronger anchoring her, the assertiveness she had suppressed for far too long. "This is exactly our responsibility. I refuse to back down now." But would her courage translate into a meaningful impact? The stakes were steep, and as the police officer weighed the situation, inching toward the woman again, tension knotted in Sara's stomach. The woman's gaze searched Sara's, pleading without a word. She took a breath, barely aware of the eyes watching her every move, absorbing the weight of her choice. Would this moment transform her from a passive observer into a catalyst for change, both for herself and this woman? Just then a sound cut through the air, a sharp gasp from the back of the crowd. It was a hat discarded in the dust that had once belonged to the woman. And with it, an echo of memories that would surface, potentially altering the very nature of this encounter. As all eyes shifted, Sara found herself at the crossroads between personal integrity and the weight of collective judgment. Would her journey ignite not just change for her, but reveal hidden truths she never anticipated about herself? The too familiar rush of uncertainty coursed through her, tightening the grip of possibility. What new realities would emerge as Sara navigated the intricate dance of pain, empathy, and emergent courage, setting the stage for a revealing confrontation yet to unfold? Sara's breath caught as the hat fluttered to the ground, its worn fabric a poignant reminder of the life the woman had once lived, a life that shared a common thread with Sara's own history. The murmurs of the crowd faded into a dull roar in the background, and her heart began to race. This was not just about the woman's struggle, this was about her own awakening, a challenge to rise above the comforts of her elevated status. "Please," Sara said, her voice carrying an urgency fueled by newfound conviction. "Everyone deserves dignity. Let's listen to her." The crowd hesitated, caught between skepticism and the sheer force of Sara's words. She stepped closer to the woman, her resolve deepening with each tentative step. "Tell me your name," she urged softly, making eye contact, desperately seeking a connection. "Why?" the woman spat, vulnerability clashing with defiance. "What does it matter? You think a name makes me more human?" "Your name is your story," Sara replied gently, recalling her previous ignorance towards personal narratives. "It matters because you matter. You're more than a headline or a problem to be solved." The protest in the woman's eyes flickered, and in that moment, Sara felt the weight of the crowd shift, curiosity and shared humanity creeping into the atmosphere. A knot of harsh judgment unraveled slightly as people began leaning in, willing to listen. "Fine," the woman spat, her voice wavering. "It's Nora." Sara's heart surged at the sound of the name. "Nora," she repeated, savoring its weight. "Tell me what happened, and let's find a way forward together." Nora hesitated, but as if encouraged by the connection strains forming between them, she began to share her story, a narrative of hardship, loss, and a desperate fight for survival. Sara absorbed it, her heart aching, not for pity, but for understanding. Each word was a reminder of her own previous blindness, and with every sentence Sara could feel the fissures within herself begin to mend. Through the chaos, Mr. Hargrove remained at the edge of the fray, tension written across his face, but as Sara firmly held her ground, she noticed him begin to yield, absorbing the palpable shift in the crowd as they began to rally behind Nora, a sense of capability returning, echoing Sara's own transformation. "Let's hear it out," he finally said, moving closer to the conversation rather than pulling away, recognizing the importance of this human moment, the pivotal change to reclaim a sense of responsibility. The officer's resolve began to soften as he observed Sara's determination and the slowly changing atmosphere. "Okay, but we need to keep this under control," he warned, warily watching the crowd's response. And so the circle of voices began. As Nora poured out her frustrations and aspirations, Sara listened intently, feeling layers of connection knitting them closer. Conversations spread like wildfire among the onlookers, stories shared pushing compassion toward the forefront. Sara became a bridge, a willing advocate who refused to let societal barriers dictate the narrative. Watched closely, she was simultaneously confronting her own distance. The emerging realization of authentic connection ignited a fierce hope in those surrounding her, all ignited by the sisterhood of shared struggle. It was then that Sara saw Linda move beside her, solidarity glimmering in her eyes. "We can do this," she whispered, the animosity that had previously colored their exchanges dissolving into the background. "Yeah," Sara breathed, feeling the warmth of a collective venture. "Let's band together and change the narrative." As the crowd converged, energy unfurling into pockets of conversation, it was then Sara realized her transformation had sprouted roots deeper than she had anticipated. It was not solely about her journey, but a willingness to invite others into their own healing stories. With renewed vigor, Sara began to speak along with Linda, intertwining their resolve to champion the voices of those often dismissed, encouraging others to stand firm in their truths and embrace the strength of their experiences. As the gathering worked together toward solutions, it was not only the woman confronting the hardships of her past, it was Sara, too, each moment beckoning the reclamation of agency over her narrative. Hours later, as they wrapped up the confrontation, attention lifted, underscoring the realization that change doesn't arise solely from actions taken, but arises from shared experiences, the intricate threads connecting people. The air felt charged with newfound purpose, the crowd no longer just spectators, but participants weaving a collective tale of resilience. In the weeks that followed, Sara committed herself to the shelter, turning her life and skills toward service, actively engaging in community outreach programs. The once confused golden girl transformed into an integral part of a fabric she had long neglected, her perspective deepening with each exchange, each purpose-driven action. Linda, too, found her own voice rising stronger, the bitterness of the past diminishing as they leaned on each other, mending their bond. As seasons shifted, both women marveled at the trappings of their lives that once felt elusive, now shimmering within reach. Connections forged not from wealth but shared experiences worthy of celebration. Sara stood, now effortlessly lending both her name and her story. A far cry from the polished surface that had once defined her, she demonstrated integrity and relatability, nurturing relationships while fostering hope in those around her. This was her achievement, not simply an external accomplishment, but profound internal growth, a newfound confidence rooted in genuine purpose, culminating in the recognition that true success stems not from wealth nor status, but the courage to intersect lives, embracing vulnerabilities and triumphs alike. And as she looked back at the journey leading to that defining moment in the streets, a feeling of deep fulfillment washed over her. This was no sudden epiphany. It was a gradual unfolding, her past paving the way to something extraordinary, a new standard for herself and her family. Yet even as the horizon brightened, the journey continued. Each day an invitation to dive deeper, confront new narratives, and celebrate the stories just beginning to blossom. Now was the time, Sara thought, to embrace her position fully, not just as a voice for the voiceless, but as an arbiter of change, determined that the past would not bind her future. Today shaped tomorrow and started an ongoing cycle of growth, vulnerability, and authentic engagement that Sara was ready to embrace. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to our channel for more exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help these stories reach more hearts. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Sara's journey. What impact did it have on you? Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Bring them along on this journey of personal overcoming together.